Hi everybody, Frank Finance here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to be doing a stock analysis on Amazon, ticker symbol AMZN. So today's agenda is pretty loaded. First, we're going to look at Amazon's fundamentals. We're going to take a look at their 2021 Q1 results. We're going to look at what a potential stock split could mean for the stock price. We're going to look at growth, prospects, and why it's so important to the stock itself. Competition in their different segments, as well as a price performance of the stock versus its peers in each of those segments. Then we're going to look at some of the political pressures and news that's in the headlines. And then finally, I'm going to give my thoughts and a price target for Amazon. If you're new to the channel, I do videos on stock analysis, investing, savings, and general personal finance. If you like the video, please consider subscribing, like it if you find the information helpful. Now back to the content. All right, so first up, let's look at the fundamentals of Amazon. We're going to look at total revenue, gross profit, EBITDA, and net income. Now, when we look at these metrics compared from 2014 to end of year 2020, we can see that in all these categories, they performed exceptionally well. So total revenue, top line, $88 billion. End of 2020, we're at $386 billion. You can see that revenue growth year over year has slowly increased, except for in 2019 where there was actually a pretty good decrease, but then they recovered pretty well in 2020. Now looking at gross profit, that's consistently grown over time, and the gross margin on that has definitely gone up year over year and looks fairly healthy. Looking at their EBITDA, again, that's growing fairly well. At a good rate, as well as the margin on their EBITDA has grown really nicely from all the way to a little bit below 5% in 2014, all the way up to right around 12.5% in 2020. And same thing with net income, negative in 2014, all the way up to $21 billion in 2020 with a 5% net income margin. So all those numbers look really great. Fundamentally, they look pretty solid, and their debt levels are fairly low. Next up, let's look at 2021 Q1 results. So first up, we got net sales. Last year, they're at $75 billion. This year, in the first quarter, they had $108 billion. That's a 44% year-over-year increase. So doing great on net sales. Move it over into operating income. That went from $3.9 billion to $8.8, up 122%, blowing that away there. And then on the net income side, they reported $2.5 billion in Q1 of 2020, and in Q1 of 2021, they reported $8.1 billion, and that's up 220%. Their net income for last year was, I believe, $21 billion. So quite substantial. That's about 40% of what they made all of last year in net income. So amazing first quarter there. And then just look at one of the segments real quick. Look at their first quarter results for AWS. You can see that their sales were up 32%. And their operating income was also up 35% year over year. So again, really good results, really great growth in each of those metrics. Next up, I want to talk about a potential stock split of Amazon. Now, I am recording this prior to earnings, so I don't know if they're going to do it yet, but it is expected that they will release, if they do a stock split, they'll release that information on the 29th earning call. So let's say that they do the stock split. It is rumored that it's a 10-to-1 split. Now that would mean that you take the current share price, divide it by 10, and now that's what the new share price would be trading at. Now, if you had currently this week, it started the week out trading around $3,300. Now it's at $3,400. It's up about 3.5% already on the rumor of a stock split. Now, if we look at Tesla and Apple, they had stock splits late in 2020. Tesla did a 5-to-1, and since post-split, it's about up 100%. At one point, it was up 200%, but it settled around 100% post-split. Apple's up 4-to-1 post-split, or did a split 4-to-1, and their stock rose anywhere from 20 to 30% post-split, and it's settled there for the time being. I think it's important to know that just splitting your stock doesn't add any value to the company, but what it does add is it is a little more accessible. Option trading is a little cheaper for more buyers. It makes the market a little more buyers in the market. And then lastly, it helps with inclusion into indices like the Dow Jones, for example. So I believe with this stock split, at least in the short term, it could move the stock anywhere between 20 and 50% based off of those latter things like options and being included into another major indice. That may be what moves the stock up. Again, stock splits don't add value on their own. As a reminder, please like the video if you find it helpful. It helps me out a ton. Now back to the content. All right, so next up, we really have to talk about growth. Growth is critical for Amazon's stock price as it's factored into a lot of their multiples. So if we look at their expected 5-year average, it's around 34%. As we went over in their fundamentals earlier, their revenue has come in a little bit under that 34% on a year-over-year basis. So I think it's a little ambitious, but they definitely have growth drivers that can, I think, get them there if they execute successfully. So if we look at their e-commerce business, they've done really well from 2019 to end of 2020. If we look at their AWS business, it has 28% growth in the last year. Their average revenue is up 65% in the past year. Let's look a little bit more into their ad revenue. So while ad revenue is fairly small in their total revenue currently, it's super important to know that they do have some growth. So looking at from where they were in 2019 to 2020, if we look at digital revenue share by company, you can see that Amazon came in third on the list behind Google and Facebook. In 2019, they had about 7.8% of that market. In 2020, they grew by almost 2.5%, up to 10.3%. Now, what does that look like on an actual revenue basis? So again, in 2020, they doubled. They increased the revenue by 63%, up to $15.73 billion. It's anticipated for 2021 that they would grow that by another 25%, roughly, to $20 billion, and then in the following 2 years, they would grow that another 25% year over year, all the way up to $30 billion in 2023. All right, so next up, I want to talk about Amazon and their competition. So if we look at Amazon, one of their biggest parts of their business is e-commerce. So we're going to talk about marketplace visits here on the first slide. So if we look at this chart, we can see that Amazon.com, their main domain, has about 9% of that share visit, followed by eBay at about 3.3%. Now you can see that Amazon's on this list several times. These are different domains, presumably for different countries. Now you can see that Rakuten, Taobao, AliExpress, and Walmart.com are on that list, but they're all below or right below 2%. Now, Amazon is a huge name in the business. Now, they compete in several different segments like e-commerce, cloud, and subscriptions. In each one of these categories, they have other behemoths that they're fighting against for market share. So looking at their e-commerce side, they got Walmart.com, eBay, and you see all the all the other up-and-coming names, right? If we look on the cloud segment, we have two of the biggest in the world, Microsoft and Google, and this is a fierce competition for cloud and storage there. On the third segment, we see subscriptions. You got Netflix and Disney's, the behemoths in their industry on the subscription side, competing with their Amazon Prime. And then you have Apple competing with their music and Google competing with their music as well. So again, in each of these categories, they have really big competitors. And I think this is, again, competition is generally good, but they have to be on top of their game if they're going to stay ahead of the rest of these guys. So next up, I want to look at a price performance versus each of those segments. So I chose a couple names inside of the e-commerce group. If we look at the past 5 years for each of them, we can see that Amazon has performed better than all those names quite substantially. They're up 386% in the last 5 years. Next up would be JD.com at 234, Alibaba at 199%, eBay at 160, and Walmart at 98%. They've done fairly well in this segment. Moving on to another segment, their price performance inside their cloud. Microsoft at the top of this group at 417%. Amazon is at 386. We're doing a 5-tier time frame, so that their number will stay the same. Google's up 217%, Oracle 90%, IBM is down 3.5%. So they're doing pretty decent there. Still top 2. Looking at their price performance on the sub side, Apple's up at the top of this list at 464, Microsoft at 446, and Amazon 386. Now, all three of those companies, Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon, they're some of the largest companies in the world. So it makes sense that they're all kind of really close in that near 400 range. And then fourth up is Google on that list, and finally rounded out with Disney at 85%. All right, so next up I want to talk about some political pressure and news as it affects Amazon stock. So first up would be antitrust. Now, all these big companies like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, there's always politicians threatening antitrust action against them. And I think Amazon is just another one of those companies, right? Now, their e-commerce business may have some antitrust concerns on competitiveness of matching buyers with businesses, so they just need to make sure they're on the up and up there. And on the AWS side, again, I think there's plenty of competition there to not really warrant any antitrust. Now, they may consider that they have too many businesses, and they may try to break those up. And if they do, I think the AWS compared to the e-commerce side, those two things can be split up, and I think they could be more valuable separated, just because you can apply more focus onto the business that way. Now, moving on to another topic is unions. I don't believe this is a huge issue, but it would cause a hit to cost of goods sold, which could reduce their margins. But again, plenty of companies have dealt with unions in the past. Amazon won't be the first if they're forced to deal with this. So I don't think it's going to be a huge deal to their long-term stock price. Now, last up, we have Bezos decided to step down as CEO, but he will be moving on to be the executive chair of the board. Now, again, I don't believe this has a huge impact on the stock. He's still going to be around to monitor the company, make decisions, really guide which direction they want, more from a strategic rather than from an operational perspective. So I think this is overall a good thing for the stock. Nothing super concerning in any of those things on antitrust, unions, or with Bezos stepping down as CEO. All right, so now I want to give my final thoughts on Amazon. I believe they're a good long-term buy and hold strategy stock. I believe that they have the good growth prospects as well as strong fundamentals that will definitely reward investors for years to come. Now, if this stock does make you nervous, they are at a near all-time high in terms of stock price, as well as they have a very high valuation. I think it's $1.6, $1.7 trillion, which values them as like top 4, top 3 stocks in the world. But all that to be said is, if it does make you nervous, it doesn't make me nervous. But if it does, consider dollar cost averaging into it. I don't believe this is going to be a stock where you regret investing in Amazon over the long term. Now, you may get burned in the short term, but I believe this is a good long-term buy and hold stock. Now, in the next 12 months, I do expect Amazon to get to $4,000. That indicates about a 17% return, which isn't too shabby. And I believe if we look at the next 5 years, I believe that stock price will double from where it's currently at, from around 3,300, 3,400, could all the way get up to 66 to 7,000 in the next 5 years. So again, I believe this is a good long-term buy and hold strategy stock. I'm buying Amazon, I hold Amazon, and I'm currently long Amazon shares. Please hit that thumbs up button. It helps me out a ton. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. I make videos on personal finance, stock analysis, and savings. Thank you so much for watching. Frank Finance, out.